What is going on? Welcome to the Money Time Freedom Podcast. We have a very special guest. His name is Rocky Lalvani, who is a profit first expert. And essentially what he does is help businesses become a lot more profitable. And he's a cash flow expert. And everybody knows I love cash flow. So welcome, Rocky. What's going on, man? Introduce yourself.
Thank you so much for having me, Eric. Excited to be here with you. And I just love that. It's money, time, freedom. I think it's the wrong order, though. Like, I want freedom. In order to have freedom, I need time. And we just need the money to focus on all of that, right? And that's what I help business owners do. I'm tired of this grind 100 times harder. I want to be lazy and make money.
How do you do that?
Build a good business that serves people, systematize the hell out of it, and just create a great dashboard and metric so that you can look at your team and go thumbs up, thumbs down. Are you doing what you're supposed to do today, this week? Too often, most business owners are stuck in the business. They can't get it out of their head into operations so that somebody else can run it. So every business is a system. Some of y'all created bad systems. People run those systems. You create good systems and you let people run them. You make tons of money. So let's go classic example. Everyone's been to McDonald's. Literally, they can hire anyone off the street, put them in that operation. You get the same quality product around the world. Yeah. They have systems, processes, numbers. All of it comes together. Follow our systems, make it work.
Right. Yeah, that's extremely important. That's something I've been honing in on as of recently for myself. But we have a pretty fast track process for our sales team, because it's just repeatable. The SOP is already set up and it's extremely important. But I can remember I was struggling at first with that. Where did your journey start? What's your story, man? I think that's the most important thing, is what makes people unique is their own story. Where did your entrepreneurship journey start?
Childhood. Somewhere along the way, I knew I wanted to be wealthy, and I was always trying to make a buck. I think the first couple things back in the day, we all had paper routes, and learning how to serve the customer is what brought in the tips, and the tips paid more than actually delivering the papers. And so that was a great way to make cash. And it was also a lesson in learning customer service, because the nicer you were, the more you listened to what they wanted, the more you did it their way, the bigger your tip every week. And so that was kind of big. The other thing is I grew up in Jersey,
So
Jersey? I grew up in, most of our time, I think, was spent up towards Montclair.
Okay.
And then we moved a little bit more central once I hit high school. But what I would do is I would take the train. I'd go to New York City. I'd buy stuff wholesale. And I'd come back out and I'd split it up and I would sell it to my friends at 100% markup.
What kind of stuff?
Everything from back then. Digital craze was just kind of starting out. So any kind of small digital products, things as simple as just, all right, y'all, this is old school, but cassette tapes.
Yeah.
Right. It could have been that. I think it was mostly digital, and then watches.
Okay.
Right. What they sell on the streets of New York, you bring it back and make it local. All of a sudden, people will pay you, and especially if you can get it wholesale out of New York, they'll definitely pay you for that. So that was the kind of stuff I did, and that was kind of the beginning. The other thing is, I took all that money, and I went and bought an Apple II computer. Like, I literally walked into the computer shop, $2,000 cold hard cash back in the early '80s. Buy a computer, and I'm a geek with that kind of stuff. And one of the first programs that I learned working on was something called VisiCalc, which is the precursor to Lotus 1-2-3. What today everyone talks as is Excel. I just loved playing with spreadsheets. Numbers told me stories. I could see patterns and things, and they still pop out at me. So when I look at tax returns, when I look at financials, when I look at numbers, I see patterns and stories, which create questions. And then I want to dig through those questions to figure out, how did we get here? And then how do we build a path forward to a highly profitable and cash flowing business?
Cash flow is king. Would you agree?
Cash flow is definitely, yeah. What is our thing? Revenue is vanity.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I agree with that 100%.
It is.
I hate revenue.
Revenue is vanity.
Yeah.
Bottom line is sanity, and cash is king. When you've got cash, all problems are solvable.
Right. Yeah, a lot of people may not understand that, who are watching this. Would you explain that?
Yeah. I deal with 7 and 8 figure business owners. Okay. I've seen their numbers. We were talking about Russell Brunson and, how people get those 7-figure records and stuff. I've had conversations, behind the scenes of what's going on. And a lot of those 7-figure people are spending 7 figures.
Right.
There's nothing left. There's no gap between what came in and what went out. And while they look great, they don't have any money in their pocket. Like, I can't tell you how many times business owners go, how come everyone's making money but me? My employees make more than I do. Right. And they get upset. That's what that's all about.
Dr. Rightus.
Most people say, I will be profitable when. Like, they consider it an event. Oh, I'll be profitable when I hit 1 million. I'll be profitable when I hit 5 million. Million and 5 million come and go. You don't build it right. Yeah. You don't build good systems and processes.
The more money you make, the more you spend too.
Correct.
I spend a lot more than I spent when I was making my first 6 figures. I was spending like nothing at that point.
I like lean and mean.
Yeah. That's why I love the organic game, because it's free cash pretty much. You pay your salespeople, that's it. But with ads, you're paying a lot of money, and then it could go wrong. How many businesses have you worked with, Rocky?
Oh, I probably worked with over 50, because we work long term. I don't work with that many at a given time. I've seen the financials of so many of them, because sometimes people just email me questions and so forth. And here's the reality of it. 80% of business owners don't look at their financials. They don't even know what's happening.
Right.
Out of the 20% that do, I would say 3/4 don't understand what they're looking at. It's 5% of businesses that actually understand their numbers and use it to drive what they do.
Now, what is there a specific niche? Do you work with all businesses, or is there a common business that kind of comes in and you work with?
So I tend to, A, revenue size, that we talked about. B, the owners have to be coachable, right? If you're not coachable, if you're not willing to listen, then we can't help you. Right. I work across a bunch of different industries. I tend to attract a lot of people in real estate and around real estate, only because I have real estate experience. I know how to do some of the different trades and so forth. Or some of the business owners make their money in one place and want to park it in real estate. So it gives me a little bit broader. But we see e-com people. The problem with e-com is people don't realize how tight the margins are. You can have a $3 million e-com store and no money. That's easy as can be.
Right. Yeah, that's why they all become coaches and teach people how to build e-com stores, because coaching offers are just more profitable.
Night and day.
I tell my clients, I say, hey, listen, we can help you get to $100,000, but in a sense, it's like having a 7-figure business, because, a lot of these guys that are making $1 million are only actually taking home an income $50,000 to $100,000. My clients who are generating $100,000, $200,000 annually, they're actually taking home like 80% of that after taxes, in EBITDA, which is great. Obviously, no paid ads, maybe one employee, and that's it. And people don't realize like how fucking massive that is. Pardon my language. Because they don't realize these millionaire businesses, they really don't have that much cash.
So you're mostly dealing with coaches, right?
I only deal with coaches. That's it.
Do you
Yeah.
know Alan Weiss?
I do not. He sounds familiar.
Alan is we'll call him coach slash consultant.
Hmm.
He deals with Fortune 500 companies.
Mm.
And Alan is really good about sharing how he built his business and what he does. So I think Alan's revenues are about 3 million a year in consulting, coaching, training.
Mhm.
You know how many employees he has?
Probably like 20, 10 to 20.
Zero.
Zero. Okay.
Zero. Because he realizes if I got to pay employees, that's money out of my pocket. I don't need them. He learned how to build a business where he does as little as possible. My favorite thing, build businesses where you don't have to do useless stuff just because your client asks you for it.
Right.
He's learned to make it so much simpler.
Yeah.
And easier for people. So yeah,
That's impressive. His offer is probably super high though. Either
to
that
work.
or he's got an automated system, kind of.
Um, yes, and like he's built his systems up. His price point today is super high, but
Right.
nobody starts there, right? I mean, the guy's he's probably late 70s now. He's been doing this for 30 something years, 40 years. So he's just been smart. He's thought about his business and he's built it the smart way instead of just doing what everyone asks for and what they're told and all of that. So he just realized I don't need an office. Like when he started calculating the cost of an office versus, wait a minute, that can pay for my kids' college. I don't need an office. I don't need a this. I don't need a that. He's learned how to just say no to everything that so many people just go, oh, we have to do that and say yes to it.
Mm-hmm. So what's the biggest business that you've worked with, and what was the biggest shift you made for them that made them profitable?
So I think number one is just awareness, right? If you don't have a good formulaic way to look at your business and understand it and know where the leaks are in your business, I think that's the number one thing. Most business owners aren't looking at their financial statements. And even if they are, this is the other problem. Financial statements are not designed for business owners. Financial statements are designed for the IRS and for accountants in Wall Street, which is all wonderful for all of those people, but they don't work for the business owner. I can't tell you how many times a business owner will sit down with their tax guy at the end of the year. The tax guy says, congratulations, you're profitable. And the business owner goes, where's the cash? And why is there none in my bank account? And other times the accountant will say, oh, you lost money last year. They're like, what are you talking about? My bank account's full of cash.
Yeah.
And it's because the profit and loss statement is just one part of the business. It flows to the balance sheet, which nobody looks at, and nobody, for the most part, looks at their balance sheet from month to month to month and understands what caused changes and how it changed and what the drivers are. Mm-hmm. And for a coaching business, it's not so bad because you don't have a ton of expenses.
Right.
But when you've got inventory, when you've got accounts receivable, like all of that stuff is a problem. So if you take a coach, like, did you build your systems to get paid up front? Right? Did you automate your entire collections process? Did you, automate all of that stuff? Or do you have people who owe you 6 months worth of revenue? Oh, the P&L says I was profitable, but I don't have it because it's all owed to me. And good luck trying to collect it.
Well, I track both numbers in my business, the revenue, the contractor revenue, and the cash collected, the cold hard cash collected. I'm more, I make decisions based off the cash collected though. because as we both know, if you have someone on a 4-month contract for $3,000 a month or whatever, they pay the first month and they tell you, hey, kiss my ass the other 3 months, then, that doesn't count as money in the bank. So I look at both numbers. I think they're both important, but most important is definitely the cash collected. What you've actually made cold-heartedly, like cold in hand.
Correct. And that's where Profit First really comes in. What Profit First is it's a cash flow management system. It's not an accounting system. It's not a record keeping system. What it actually does is it works the way most business owners do. Most business owners look at their bank account. Is there money? Is there no money? And so money's not going to show up into your bank account till you have cold hard cash, right?
Right.
And what it does is it manages your cold hard cash. It puts money aside for profit. It puts money aside for your pay. It puts money aside for taxes. That, I think, is the one biggest thing that people who have high revenue and low cost of goods or no real expenses, they don't realize what their tax burden looks like. Right. Tax time comes and they freak out. So this system actually puts money aside for taxes, and then it puts your money aside. Say, hey, run your business on this small pot of money, be lean, mean, and make it happen.
Lean, mean, and green. Yeah, I like that. So what's the biggest business that you worked inside? What kind of business was it too?
Biggest businesses, I've had a few that are in the 10 and 20 million range.
Right.
They vary. Some of them are in wholesale distribution. A lot of my larger guys are builders. We're in the trades. So most of those are the bigger ones.
I'd imagine having a builder's business or a construction business, that'd be really hard to manage those numbers. Just all these employees, all this contracts, and that sounds like a pain in the ass.
Again, you've got to build good systems. It is so easy. If you think about building a house, how many different things go into that house?
Right.
And if you don't price it correctly to begin with, manage your change orders, make sure everyone comes in where they're supposed to come in, and that, you could be leaking money left and right. Like you could have a $10 million business and nothing to show for it because the money disappeared.
Sounds good on paper, though.
sounds wonderful on paper. Because coaching businesses are good. They don't have a lot of this complexity. Yeah. I think the biggest problem coaches have probably is mindset around charging their value, understanding value-based pricing. It's not your hours that count. It's how much value you can deliver that brings a shift to the person you're working with. How much money can they make because you help them achieve that next level? And that's what your real value is. It's not a X amount of dollars per hour. And I think a lot of coaches struggle with the mindset of appropriately charging. Nobody's going to pay that. Yeah, they will.
Yeah.
I'd be shocked at what people will pay.
I agree with
dreams.
100%. 100%. It's confidence. It's just lack of confidence. And that could cost you, that lack of confidence can cost you a lot of money. But I also do think someone, for the newer people, is charge where you're confident at. But as you start closing, if you're getting more than 50% yeses, it means you're charging too cheap. It means you need to increase the prices, right? And you're going to work less charging more money, even if you get a 20% closing rate by doubling your prices. I'd rather work with a small amount of woofs who are paying me a lot of money versus a bunch of lambs who are paying me a little bit of money, who are a huge pain in the ass. People that are cheap and pay little prices, they are the worst clients, the biggest pains in the ass. The people that pay you 20 grand, they just do what they have to do. They don't ask too many questions and they get the job done.
And that is the key, right? Picking the right people. And here's the thing, wolves aren't going to pay lamb prices.
Right. They're
They're
gonna be like,
like,
what the
oh,
hell?
you must not be good enough for me.
Right.
I need to go find
Yeah.
somebody better.
Yeah.
So the fact that you're charging so little actually turns people off.
It does. Yeah.
And so
It does.
that there's a whole pricing psychology to everything.
Right.
And you've got to be comfortable with that. You got to practice it and be comfortable saying this is what it is.
Right.
People will pay it.
It takes the same amount of effort to charge someone $100 that it takes for the effort to charge $20,000.
It does.
So, same amount of time, same investment. So you might as well charge 20,000 or whatever, you know, your price is of what you're doing, the highest price.
You got to bring value though. If you
Of
can't
course.
bring the value, then you can't charge the price. So you got to make sure you're bringing value. You have to make sure your value is clear and that people understand it. I think too often people like to get fancy. I tell people keep it simple.
Right.
Like keep it 5-year-old simple. If a
Right.
5-year-old doesn't understand what you're doing, nobody else does either.
Right. Ambiguity and complexity just confuses the customer. Make it so easy that, like you said, a 5-year-old can understand it. Learn how to communicate that value in a simple way. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think too many salespeople try to, you know, sell the product and they go into techno babble. They just speak about stuff that no one even understands instead of just selling the transformation, keeping it simple.
And that's it. It's sell the transformation. People are buying the transformation, right? And I think maybe not so much in coaching, but in regular business, you see that. More often than not, they're selling the mechanism, and nobody cares about the mechanism. What they care about is the result. So if you talk about the problem and the result, nobody cares about the mechanism. But we all focus on the mechanism.
Right.
And that's where you get caught. And that's why your sales probably aren't going well.
Right. Yeah. Just bridge the gap for each one of your customers' problems. You know, just bring them from simply is bringing them from hell to heaven. That's it. Yeah, I totally agree with that. When did you start this company? What's the name of your company, by the way, Rocky?
Profit comes first.
I love that. I wish that was my company's name. I'm a little bit jealous. Profit comes first. When did you start it?
I've been doing this for 4 years. I finally figured out what I was really good at, what I love doing, what the market was willing to pay for, and what there was a need for. And bringing that all together was kind of really, really cool. It was just an aha for me. I just assumed business owners understood the business of business. And I was like, what do you mean they don't understand the business of business, then the numbers and everything else? And I learned it's because they love doing what they do. And accounting and financials just usually aren't on the list.
Hate it. I hate it.
See, I love money and I love numbers.
Yeah.
So it's good for me.
So what was your biggest challenge starting up? Let's look back 4 years ago when you first started.
Yeah. You know, I think there's always the hesitancy. Will this work? Will people pay me? Can I really provide that much value? So I don't think in the beginning I understood the amount of the problem that was out there.
Right.
The other thing is, in the beginning, I didn't have their language. So it's understanding the language of the customer and how they're talking about their pain points.
Right.
And then the other thing we needed was a good delivery process and a good repeatable system to be able to do that. So I think the beginning of the journey was creating a good sales process, getting out there and finding the right place to go fishing. I think in the beginning, we go fishing everywhere for anything. And it's really defining the right place to be to find the right clients that are the right fit for you.
Right.
I think we talked about the sales process, and then a good deliverable process that's easy and repeatable, that doesn't take you hours upon hours per client to be able to deliver.
Right.
And then at the end of the day, it comes down to two things. You've got the marketing wheel and you've got your delivery wheel. And like a bicycle, if your marketing wheel and your delivery wheel aren't in sync, you're either flying over the handlebars or flying off the back end. So finding that perfect rhythm so that you're not riding a roller coaster, and building the right offerings so that you're not, I mean, if you've got to constantly hunt, so be it. But I think coaches who have to hunt all the time, they're very, very busy hunting, and it's hard for them to do both.
Right. Because they're wearing all the hats.
Because of wearing all the hats, and because marketing becomes a full-time job. And then if you can't deliver and deliver well, then
how big is your fulfillment team?
It's just me for the most part. My daughter works with me, but we have our own clients. But I do my own fulfillment for my own clients.
Gotcha.
We built a good process and system that is easy to work within, repeatable, highly systematized, that things flow. Like, it took us hours. It took us a long time to put the systems in place.
Right.
But now that the systems are in place and doable, we just keep tweaking them, making them faster, easier, better. And we've created a highly customizable system that's easy to customize to the specific client, but all uses the same framework. So imagine we built a car and we can put a different, top on it, or a different, whatever we need to switch out for that. But it all has the same basic under chassis. We just painted a different color, or tweak which parts are most important to that particular client.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the first things we focus on in our coaching program with our clients is that avatar. Who is that ideal customer? Because a lot of us are marketing to ourselves, and we're not the ones buying. It's our customer. It doesn't matter what we think about a product. What matters is what our customer thinks about the product. So that's one of the first things we focus on is who is our ideal client avatar, where are they hanging out at, and joining that conversation in their head. What do you kind of do for marketing? LinkedIn, or what is your strategy?
So we have three major ways that we get clients. One is networking. So getting out, finding the right groups and places to be. Two is referrals. So existing clients, but that's not going to happen in the beginning. That's going to take a while to get up. And the third is the podcast. So our podcast brings in clients. And we follow up the podcast with a little bit of social media. Here's the reality of the situation. My clients are busy business owners. You know where they aren't? Playing on social media. They're head down in their business. And it's understanding where your client is truly hanging out.
Networking events for you.
Networking in the podcast. So here's the thing. Most business owners are busy. A lot of them do work out, or they drive places. That's the only time that they have to actually learn and listen. And so those that want to learn and listen are hanging out on podcasts that are business podcasts. So they're the ones that are coming to me.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I listen to podcasts every morning, so
yeah.
What you have your own podcast. How many podcasts do you drop per month or week? What would you suggest, and where are you at with yours right now?
So I have two. The original one was for a different business idea that did not pan out. I
Okay.
still keep it because it allows me to meet great people. I have fun. It's this point, it's a hobby. Let's
Right.
call it what it is. The other one is specific. So all the lessons I learned from that first podcast, I implemented into my second podcast. And so when I hit the second podcast, it was built correctly, titled correctly, system, like all those things were ready to roll.
Right.
I drop one episode a week, about 30 minutes an episode.
Okay.
That is our goal. I think we're at about 150-ish or something.
Great.
So
most podcasts don't make it that long.
Most podcasts don't make it past 3 or 10.
Right. Yeah.
We should be about 3.5 years almost coming up.
Nice.
So whatever that number is.
Yeah. That's great. Alex Hormozi, a lot of people just see his success, but he actually did his podcast for 5 years until ever getting like any traction. So it's one of those things. It's a long play, personal branding.
It is. And here's the thing with the podcast. I don't need a ton of listeners. I need a very highly specialized group of listeners who are my ideal clients. And what really happens is they hang out and listen to my podcast. They'll grab 30 or 40 episodes. I've been in their head for 30 or 40 episodes. When they finally show up on my calendar, they're ready to do business. They're not calling up to see what's going on. They're calling up because like, I'm ready to do business with you.
Yeah.
And they've gone through the whole sales process already in their head, and I've never met them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with that. We've had people come in from the podcast and it was easy. I remember being pissed off at one of my closers because he didn't close someone that came from the podcast. I'm like, how can you not close that person? They're so easy. I didn't say that to him, but in my head, I'm like, oh God.
But so you have to understand something again. And we talked about this before we hit record. There are the people who are easily excitable, and then there are people who show up. So like I've got a buddy who does a financial podcast.
What's his name?
It's what is his? It's Joe Saul-Sehy. He does Stacking Benjamins, massive show. But they know if somebody comes in and starts listening to the podcast, and in 3 months they call up and they want to talk to the financial advisor, they're like, yeah, that's not a hot lead.
Right.
Somebody's been listening to the podcast for over a year. That's a hot lead. That's somebody who has gone the distance, has the relationship built up, and is not just kind of kicking tires. And again, that's a consumer. Consumer's in a different place than a B2B. So it just depends. And you have to figure out how it works for you. My listeners, they've already got a big problem that they're looking to solve, and that's why they're not going there for entertainment. They're going there to solve a problem. Right. And so they are in a different place at the moment.
Is there a commonality between the expenses of these business owners that they're like the biggest leak in their business? Do you ever find a commonality?
There's not.
Each one kind of have their own little thing?
Each one has their own problem. So every business, when you look at a business, there are certain commonalities. It's a question of where in those commonalities. So first question of the business is, do they have good gross margin? Again, coaching business, that's not a problem. But if you've got an Amazon store, most of them have no gross margin. They're selling $1 million, but they're barely have maybe 100 or 200,000 that they've got to run their entire business on now.
Right.
So there's that. Second one is the expenses are too high. They got themselves too many employees, too many people, too much staff, and their revenue went up and down. And they build for the best of revenue, and then they have not the best of revenue, and now money is leaking out their business faster than they know what to do with it. Mm-hmm. The third is the business owner who steals from himself. And what I mean by that is they think of their business as a piggy bank, and they overpull money out of their business to pay for an inflated lifestyle that is not acceptable. And I think the last one is just a roller coaster business. It could be a seasonal business, or it could just be that you don't have good sales processes in place to have consistent sales coming in the door. And that's what happens to a lot of people, is inconsistent sales. In the less than $1 million business, the number one thing I think is good systematic revenue generation.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. Last week we had Adam Carroll on here, who's you know him?
I know Adam, yeah.
Yeah. He's an expert with money psychology, and he works with people who, he called it doctoritis, where you're making, $250,000 per year, but your lifestyle is causing you to not become a profitable human being because your mortgage, you're this, you're that. And
he was on for Shred Method.
That's his, yeah.
Yep.
He was on it.
Same Adam Carroll I know well.
Yeah, he's great, man. He's a genius.
Yes.
And yeah, it's crazy how many people, like the third component that you said, where people are inflating their lifestyle beyond, what they're really making. Mm-hmm. I think I suffer from that to a certain extent. Like I spend way more than I should. I'm still profitable, but I spend way more than I should on shit that doesn't matter.
And so what we do, and I do this for all business owners who fall into this trap, we create a separate line, which is called discretionary expenses, and we put it below the line on the P&L. And then, so it's all automated still. You run your P&L. Your P&L says the business was profitable. You personally, Eric, spent $22,000 a month that you sucked out of the business. Were you aware of that? You're like, how'd that happen? Exactly. Yeah. How did that happen? And so by separating it, you now have clarity. Okay, my business is successful. I'm the fool in the room.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's happened to me. It's literally, you're speaking to me right now.
It's a tax deduction, right, Eric?
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. That is the biggest sucker bet going. It's a tax deduction.
That's what we say to justify it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a tax deduction solution that's really, really wonderful. Give me your money. You'll get a tax deduction. I'll take you out to a nice dinner. I'll buy you a nice bottle of wine or beer, whatever you like to drink. We'll have a wonderful time. Give me enough money. I'll even fly you somewhere and we'll go have a party. And you'll have all the tax deductions you want. And if that sounds stupid, yeah, it is.
It definitely is, for sure. I definitely went through that, honestly. I mean, I've made a lot of mistakes in the past 6-7 years of being a business owner, but one of the best, I was making the most amount of money when I was making less money, but I was just living as if I was broke. I just lived way below my means, actually. I was so cheap. I would go out. Even if I went out, I would be drunk as hell before I enter the place. And I don't drink often, but I would be drunk before I'm in there, and I would spend maybe $10-20 on alcohol. And now when I go out, I spend like $500 like an idiot. You know what I mean? It's like you raise that threshold of it gets to your head, that revenue and stuff.
It does. It's lifestyle creep. It's not hard to do that. You don't notice it. And the next thing you know,
till you look at your bank account.
Till you look at your bank account.
Like,
let me ask you a question.
Not growing.
But the question is, did you have just as much fun on the $20?
I did. More, actually, probably.
More.
Yeah.
So, that's the reality of it. What I have found, the higher and higher I go up the luxury chain, the less fun it is. You know why? If I'm paying X amount for something, if I'm sitting in first class on the plane and they don't bring me a drink before takeoff, I'm mad.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. I paid for this luxury. Where is the service I'm supposed to get?
Right.
And most places don't deliver. It's just the reality of it. They all look pretty on the outside looking in, but on the inside looking out, it's like, was it worth it? I'm like, more often than not, the answer is no. Glad we came. Glad we tried it. Sometimes we know we're going to spend a fortune, and we know it's not going to be worth it, but you know what? It's okay. We splurge once in a while, and we'll do that. You got to have balance between the two and figure out what works for you.
Yeah.
And sometimes you spend, but keep it in line most of the time.
Right. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. So what do you think, one last question for you. What do you think for a new business owner, a startup, what do you think the most important character trait or behavior or is for them? I mean, that's like the number one success trait.
I think the number one thing you need to do is literally on the back of a napkin, write out your numbers so that you understand the business you're building. So you talk about money, time, freedom. When I built my business, I said, how much money do I need? Okay, how much time am I willing to put into that? What does that math look like? Now I know what I have to charge at a minimum to be able to achieve those rates. I know how many clients I needed. I knew what I had to charge them at a minimum, and I knew what I had to build towards. And when I hit my numbers, I know that I don't need to keep pushing the throttle because I want freedom. I can push the throttle, but I give up my freedom, and the freedom isn't worth the juice. So it's understanding that, planning it out, doing the numbers, and then making the decisions. That's why I have no team. I don't want to manage people. That takes away my freedom, takes away my energy. Thank you, but no thank you. Yeah. Right? I'll have contractors who edit my podcast and do all that stuff, but I don't have to manage them, right? They know what they're doing. They're experts at what they do. Here it is. Take care of it. Send it back to me when it's ready. You know, it takes me 2 minutes to confirm everything's relatively good, and we keep going from there. And today, more than ever, you can automate so much stuff. Yeah. And you can outsource so much stuff. So just figure it out. But I think that's the number one thing is reverse engineer your business to give you the money, the time, and the freedom that you want. And if you don't bother to do that, then how do you set your goals? How do you know where you're going or what you want? Right. Right. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And it allows for you to know what to prioritize, you know, those KPIs to hit. Okay. If I know I want to make, so for example, we say to our students, all right, for a beginner, for you to make $10,000 per month, it's 10 clients at $1,000 each. You know, how many messages do you need to send out to get that? How many prospects? How many calls do you need to get on? How many calls do you need to close? How many need to show up? When you reverse engineer that, it gives you like a target where you can say, okay, so if I do these things, there's absolutely 0% chance of failure. But if I don't hit these numbers, well, it also holds you accountable and responsible to your business. Like, well, Eric says, you know, I got to do 50 messages per day to allow for me to schedule, you know, 1 call per day and close, you know, 5 calls per week or whatever it is. Right. Well, did you do your messages? And it just holds you responsible to hitting those targets. So I definitely agree with that. That's a big thing. Math. Right. I mean, we've mastered the math because we've done it. You know what I mean? We still do it. Our team does. So we know there's numbers that they need to target and hit to allow for them to hit that $10,000 per month or more, right? Whatever your number, it doesn't matter what the number is. It's all a math equation. Figure out your math. Mm-hmm. Right. And here's the other thing. Once you hit that number, like I built my business as a reverse curve. So I said, okay, I'm just going to take your example. I need 10 clients at $1,000 to hit 10,000 a month. And then I said, all right, but my long-term goal is 5 clients at $2,000. Yeah. Right. So that it's even less work and I can maintain the money and have more freedom.
Right. Yeah, we mostly set people at 1,000, just for their first few clients, and then we double that up once they feel confident. Because of course, startup business owners are very lacking that confidence in selling at even 1,000. Some of them, so sometimes it's a struggle for us to even get them confident enough to sell 1,000. So if it was up to us, we'd be like, hey, go out there on your first client, charge 3,000. It took me honestly, 2 years to start charging 3,000 for an online fitness coaching program. I started off at $1,000 and then gradually increased it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense though. I totally agree with that. And where can people find you? Where can people get on your podcast, Instagram? Where are you at? Where can people get help from you?
Podcast is everywhere. It's called The Profit Answer Man. So that's what we talk about, how to make you more profitable.
You got some good names.
Huh?
You got some good names, man. I like the names.
Website is profit comes first. Like everything is SEO. Like everyone knows what we do and why we do it, right? So to speak, they understand who we are, and that's what it's been best. Or just Google my name. I own the first 10 pages of Google, so you'll find me.
All right, big boss, man. Okay. And what if someone wants to work with you, man?
On the website or in the podcast, there's booking links. You can get on my calendar. But get to know me, like go listen to the stuff before you show up on my calendar.
Yeah.
Just because I want you to make sure that you're reaching out to the right person for you. You get to know who I am, what I do, and how I do it. And then you decide, is this a fit for me or is this not a fit for me? And that's perfectly fine. I do, even though most of our clients are up in the 7-figure plus range, we do have coaches that are in the 6-figure range, mainly because they don't have overhead. So they can get a big amount of return on their dollars.
Great. That's awesome. All right, Rocky. Well, I appreciate you very much. It's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. And we'll see you guys on the next one on the Money Time Freedom podcast. Make sure you share this with someone that needs to hear this so that more people can be helped. And make sure you go give Rocky a follow and listen to his podcast if you want to be more cash flow consistent and profitable. Peace, guys. Take care.